happening here. This is a work about how contextual values are related with Darwin's theories. Not the usual things that people say that contextual values are related with Darwinian theories are, I don't know, capitalism and the view of nature, or invisible hand and the natural selection theory. This is a more direct way in which you can link ideology and theory. Yeah. This is I wrote about this in 2 papers. That one about Descent of Man, and that one about expression of emotion, the other book of Darwin. But this is in Spanish. I'm working in a version of this paper in English, so your comments are welcome. Well, my goal is to show a stronger connection than usual between Darwin and the slavery position and his explanations of origins of races and of origin of expression of emotions, and to show the sense in which the book of emotions completes some arguments of Descent of Man. The structure of the talk, well, I will show some passages that are usually presented about the Descent of Man. I will show how linking some such passages to Darwin and the slavery ideology can resolve them, especially considering the specific explanation of the evolutionary origin of racial differences. I will show some passages that are usually presented about the expression of emotions, the book. And I will link the explanation of the origin of expressions to the anti-slavery ideology via Descent of Man. And finally, conclusions. Well, we start with the Descent of Man. Usually, are in bibliography about 3 passages are pointed out. How to say? Well, the first one is, why does the book have such a strange structure? The other one is, what is its main objective, goal? And the third one, what about the very strange explanation of the origin of races? Well, the structure of the book. Darwin himself spoke about the strange structure of the book. I have just finished 2 papers on fertilization of plants, and have now small about men and sexual selection, which will appear to you an incongruous union. Say Darwin to happen. Why is that? Because, well, Descent of Men has 2 parts. One, Descent of Men, the second one, sexual selection. But the Descent of Men only the 2 volumes of the book, sexual selection part, start in the middle of the first volume. Yes. So you have 250 pages about the Descent of Men and 500 pages about sexual selection. The part dedicated to sexual selection in non-human animals has 400 pages. A lot. See? And sexual selection in humans only 60 pages. The part dedicated to birds has 200 pages. Yes. The original species of the book has 500 pages. 60% of the book is devoted to sexual selection in non-human animals. Strange. The incongruous human. No, Darwin spoke about a lot of the sexual selection in non-human animals, and a lot of non-human animals. Well, of course, if you read the book, you know that sexual selection is there because Darwin explained the origin of racial differences using appealing to sexual selection. Yes. this is the book about. I'm going to spoil all this talk. It's a beautiful book about the way in which anti-slavery ideology influencing Darwin thinking. Excellent, from Desmond and Moore. They say that why does Darwin devote so much space to sexual selection in the explanation of racial differences? Well, according to Desmond and Moore, this makes sense if attention is paid to Darwin and slavery ideology. Now, they say Darwin would put his utmost into sexual selection because the subject intrigued him, no doubt, but also for a deeper reason. The theory vindicates his lifelong commitment to human growth. This is one of the theses. Why? At the time of Darwin publication, the discussion about the status of races was mixed with political positions about slavery. There were three different discussions, but interconnected in a complex way. One about the systematic of humans. Abolitionists argue that human races are species, and monogenists argue that human races are subspecies. About the evolution of the human races evolved independently, and the human races evolved from already human common ancestor. And there was a creationist version of the discussion. The human races were created independently, or all races are descended from the same created common ancestor. There was two major political, factual, ethical positions. Not every person falls in one of those. The discussion at the time was complex, but if you can make this big idealization, by one hand, races are species conditions. They were created and evolved independently or evolved independently. Savagery was the natural state of some races. These races were not capable of being domesticated or civilized. And the other one, human races belong to the same species, monogenism. The state of savagery of some races is reversible. Darwin is with the second ones. Yes? Of course, this discussion is related with slavery, and at that time was the discussion, the time. Well, Desmond and Moore argued that Darwin anti-slavery ideology influenced all his work, specifically that dissent should be interpreted as a defense of monogenism in connection with the discussion of slavery. Now, this is the point of Desmond and Moore. In the following, I will briefly discuss and relativize this point. Finally, that the explanation of the origin of human races through sexual selection is linked to this main goal. In what follows, I will try to deepen and strengthen this point. Yes? But according to Desmond and Moore, defending monogenism is the implicit goal of dissent and explain its strange structure, no? The two presupposed. Well, Darwin discussed this question in chapter 7 in Dissent. In this chapter, he presents the discussion between polygenists and monogenists. And he defends tentatively and shine, tímidamente, shine, that races are subspecies and not species. Yes? That reviews arguments for and against monogenisms. An argument pro-monogenisms to highlight is that there are profound mental similarities Darwin says. Since the numerous an important point of similarity between races in body structure and mental faculties are unlikely to have been acquired independently, they must have inherited from progenitors who possess the same characters, same traits. The conclusion of the chapter is, finally, we may conclude that when the principles of evolution are generally accepted, as they certainly will be before long, the dispute between the monogenist and the polygenist will die a silent and unobserved death. Okay? This is not a defense of monogenism, but rather a defense that the discussion is meaningless in the evolutionary framework. Why? No, it's not a defense of monogenism. What Darwin concluded. Well, I think that we need to focus in the explanation of the origin of racial differences that Darwin gives. What is the explanation? The traits that distinguish human races are not useful in the Darwin thought. They arose neither by natural selection to improve survival, nor to direct influence of the environment. They arose by sexual selection for aesthetic preference. Every race has its own aesthetic preference, as the case of peacock and the tail of the peacock. In most cases, it is the aesthetic preference of the females that end up shaping the males, but in the case of humans, Darwin believes that it was mainly the males, the most powerful of the tribes, polygamous, who kept the females in a state of slavery, to whom the power of choice fell. Races arose from the divergence resulting from arbitrary aesthetic preference in the choice of males. Is the Darwin explanation. A beautiful explanation of the origin of racial differences. The difference between races are not morphic, so they were transmitted equally to males and females. This is an exception. But that the Young said that about the explanation. External racial differences between humans are thus mainly the result of the infinitely varying and capricious aesthetic preference of various peoples. This one of the strangest idea even developed by Darwin. Now, this is the third passage. Why is that explanation? Well, to me, there are certain features of this explanation that could be related with Darwin anti-slavery ideology, independent of the defense of the monogenism. And that could help solve the three puzzles about. No? This, I spoke about that in this paper. Well, so possible links between the specific explanation and anti-slavery ideology. As the trait that the races are selected for aesthetic preference, the differences are superficial and ornamental, not essential or black differences, not superficial. Darwin never explicitly say this, but he does say that artificial selection acts superficially, and that sexual selection for aesthetic preference works in a similar way to artificial selection. No? For example, Darwin said, as man can produce and certainly has produced a great result by its methodological and unconscious means of selection, what may not nature effect? Man can only act on external and visible character. Nature cares nothing for appearances except insofar as they may be useful to any being. She can act on every internal organ, on every shade and constitutional difference, on the world machinery of life. No, but men no. And in other places say that in the same manner as man can give beauty according to his standard of taste to his male poultry, so it appears that in a state of nature, female birds, by having long selected the more attractive males, have added to their beauty. Yes. Well, this is the first thing. No? The racial differences are ornamental and superficial. Second, it assumes that different races have the same mental capacities. The point of whether there are one and the same species or not seems to Darwin debate. Yes. And in fact, it's not so important in Darwinian approach because the difference between varieties and species is not clear. What he finds non-negotiable is that the mental capacities of different races is the same. And it's an extensive quote, but it's important. Although the existing race of men differ in many respects, they are found to resemble each other closely in a multitude of points. Many of these points are of so unimportant or of so singular nature that it is extremely improbable that they should have been independently acquired by originally distinct species or races. The same remark holds good with equal or greater force with respect to the numerous points of mental similarities between the most distinct races of men. I was unceasingly struck with, while living with the Fuegians on board of the Beagle, with the many little traits of character showing how similar their minds were to ours. Yes. But Darwin, the argument is mentioned, but it's not developed in this document. It's important, but never develop this argument. Never explicitly say this is a trait, mental trait that could not be acquired independently. I put sticky note. No, it's not a sticky note because it has a. What's the name of
Pin.
the pin? No, but the note. Pin note. I don't know what. Okay. But remember that. No. Darwin say that there are mental characters that could not be acquired independently. But why? What are those traits? Well, but he said that this is shown by the pleasure with which they all take in dancing, music, acting, painting, tattooing, and otherwise decorating themselves in their mutual comprehension of gesture language, and as I shall to be able to show in a future essay, by the same expression in their features and by the same inarticulated cries when they are excited by various emotions. Yes? Well, keep going. The third feature of the explanation that you could relate with the anti-slavery ideology is that the explanation is very accomplished. It implies the dissolute aesthetic taste of different people. There is no chain of being, which involves a scale of perfection and beauty. There are no objective standards of perfection and beauty. Things that you can find in the racist writings. Desmond and Moore explicitly argued that the theme of beauty was at the heart of the slave literature. For example, they quote type of mankind. No? Beauty was integral to the writer of literature. That type of mankind wasn't into the many beauty of the noble Caucasian face, the perfection of beauty of which is just admired. It praised the faultless chronological ball, whether in ancient Greece or modern Britain, whose apollo feature contrast with the coarse and ugly Negro physiognomy. Now they say that. I work about the beauty in that paper. It's very important in Darwin books, the discussion about beauty in nature. Well, so Darwin proposed a new approach or paradigm or disciplinary matrix or what you want, in which concepts of the tradition presupposed in the slave or racist text lose or change their meaning. Pre-Darwinian assertions in such texts says to be sustainable in the new framework. It's better to think Darwin text not under the key of argumentation, but as under the Jungian key of revolutionary law. Yes. If you read, I don't know, this is an example of the book of Charles White. Very difficult to read because they put an F instead of an S. I don't know why. You know why? Where shall we find and live in the European that nobly archer have contained such a quantity of brain and support by a hollow conical pillar adjoining its center, where the perpendicular face, the prominent nose, and the round prostate. Well, and this is interesting. This is interesting, linked with the note. In what other quarter of the globe shall we find the blush that overspread the soft features of the beautiful woman of Europe, that emblem of modesty and delicate feelings and sense? See, the blush. Well, this is the kind of thing that you can say in the new framework. And that's why I think that Darwin said that the discussion, the political discussion between monogenist and abolitionist will die a silent and unobserved day. Well, disclaimer. None of this means that Darwin did not speak about progress. A question debated by Darwin and Darwin interpreters. That he did not think that there were some people more civilized than others, and that he was Eurocentric in his judgment, and that Darwin is not racist by our standards. Yes. Well, now we arrive to the expression of emotions book. Also, there are some puzzles, different puzzles significant about this book. Well, Darwin takes a counterpoint text devoted to the origin of expressions. For example, Charles Bell's The Anatomy and Philosophy of Expression. Bell was an natural theologian. According to Bell, facial muscles have the function of expressing emotions. They were designed by God for this purpose and were peculiar to humans. You expect that Darwin denied the 2 and 3, but not the 1, of course. You will expect that Darwin argued that the facial muscles have the function of expressing emotions, that they arose by natural selection, and that you can find in other animals. Yes, the thing that he did do in original species with different traits, physiological traits. But Darwin thinks that the facial muscles have not the function of expressing emotions. That the expression of emotion doesn't have function at all. And that some expressions are peculiar to humans. Both things are curious. The expression of emotions do not have the function of expressing the emotion, says that. Why? This is a quote, no, about that. Those who believe in design will find it too difficult to account of the for shyness being the most frequent and efficient of all causes of blushing, as it makes the blusher to suffer and the beholder uncomfortable, without being of the least service of either of them. Sorry, in this sense, Darwin appealed to group natural selection to explain traits that disadvantage the carriers, but not here. He does not even write those. He didn't spoke about group selection in expression book. Darwin explained all expression through three principles. The principle of antithesis, a mood opposite to a given mood produce mood movement opposite to those of that mood. For example, an affecting cat adopts a posture opposite to an angry cat. That of the action due to the constitution of the nervous system, many expressions will be produced when the sensorium is highly excited, generating an excess of nervous power that is transformed into expressive movements such as muscle tremors, useless, or even harmful. And the third one, the most curious, the principle of associated useful acts. Certain deliberate actions for certain purpose, which may have to do with alleviating or satisfying a particular need, can become associated with the emotions associated with that need in such a way as to create an habit. If such an habit is maintained over several generations, it may eventually become innate and disconnected from that need. You understand that? Again, for example, the expression of anger or contempt, which involves raising the end of the lips in dogs and in humans, Darwin is a model trait. Darwin suggests that we must have had ancestors with large canines that fought by beating, and that they deliberately showed them before the fighting, or fighting with open. The expression eventually becomes associated with the emotion, so that today, although we no longer fit by beating, we no longer fit by biting, we still raise the end of our lips when we feel anger. Yeah. So a movement with expressive or non-expressive function arises from the conscious action in an ancestor. The expression ends up being associated with certain emotion by habit. If maintained long enough, the expression can become innate and disconnected from its original function, if it had one. And this is a demand. Why? First, it's a mechanism that explains adaptation that Darwin used in his notebook before discovering natural selection. The first one, Lamarckian mechanism, Lamarckian mechanism used before natural selection. Second, requires of inheritance as an evolutionary mechanism per se, and requires high intellectual capacity in non-human animals. But these two are not puzzles at all, because Darwin accepted these two things in all his works. But the first ones, yes, it's a puzzle. Why Darwin understood that old mechanism? Only here, Well, of course, the steps Darwin takes in the book are justified by the internal structure of the book itself, but I am particularly interested in exploring the question in light of Darwin anti-slavery positions and as a complement to the argument and explanation presented in this. Yes, this is a talk that appear in short notes when the expression comes appear in the book, showing that the book is not a technical book. Well, it has impact. Well, Ruddy work about this subject. Ruddy linked explanation of the origin of expressions to Darwin and the slavery goals, extending Desmond and Moore thesis to the text on expressions. In particular, Darwin argues, I think Ruddy defends that many of the expressions, almost all he discusses, are homologous across human races, and some are homologous with non-human animals. That is why Ruddy argues Darwin thinks that the expressions have no function, so that they could not have arisen by natural selection and therefore could not have conversion. However, Ruddy's conclusion has some problems. No, the argument of Ruddy is the interpretation that Ruddy made about Darwin is expressions are non-functional in humans, so they did not arise by natural selection, so they cannot have conversion, so the expressions are homologous in humans. And all of this is linked with the monogenism, polygenism discussion. How? First problem, holding that expressions are homologous does not seem relevant to the question of monogenism because they are homologous expressions with other non-human species, as well. So, yes. But the argument could become more complex. For example, Darwin argued that various species of monkeys express their feelings in many different ways. And this fact is interesting as in some degree bearing on the question whether the so-called races of men should be ranked as distinct species or varieties. For, as we shall see in the following chapters, the different races of men express their emotion and sensation with a remarkable uniformity through the world. Yes, the monkeys express anger with different faces and things. Not us. So we can complete there. No? Expressions are the same in all human races. So the divergence is reason. So human races are subspecies. Yes, and this is a defense of monogenism. And Darwin is explicit about that. But is this inference correct in Darwin's work? Now we use this inference. No, Sauer speak about this as Darwin principle. No? Adaptative similarities provide almost no evidence for common ancestry, while similarities that are useless or deleterious provide strong evidence for common ancestry. This is what we are interested in. It's true that we can hold that Darwin think that this is a correct inference. Well, this supposes that natural selection is the only mechanism that could generate conversions. And this is not true in Darwin's work, because use and disuse with plus inheritance of upright characters, the direct influence of the environment, and This association by habit and inheritance of acquired traits produce conversions. Who can produce conversions? Yes. So it's anachronic, the inference. Now we use. We think that natural selection is the only mechanism that mainly produce conversions. At least considering emotions. Thus, the link between non-functional expression and monogenism and anti-slavery suggested by Rabbit is not so strong. But I think it's possible to establish a stronger relationship between Darwin's anti-slavery ideas and the specific explanation on the origin of blushing, not deviated by the defense of monogenism, which, as we had seen before, was not so important in Darwin's thinking. The method Darwin used to study expressions in other races consisted of a 60-question survey that 16-question survey that was circulated among various people who were close to different populations around the world. The general conclusion that Darwin drew from this survey is as follows. It followed from the information thus acquired that the same state of mind is expressed through the world with remarkability uniformity. And this fact is in itself interesting as an evidence of the close similarity in bodily structure and mental disposition of all the races of man. Why? Why does the fact that expressions are homologous imply that mental dispositions are the same in different races? Especially considering that there are homologous expressions with not human animals with different mental capacities. The key is in the blush, the second question of the survey. Not the second that Darwin asked to the different people. Well, blushing was an expression that other books discussed at the time. No, it's not a thing that Darwin found. For example, there was this book is dedicated to that expression. See, and it says there are some perhaps who may be inclined to smile at the subject of this essay. What happened with blushing? Blushing is, well, redness, yeah. The expression would originally have been fixed, especially in relation to concern about what others think of our appearance in Darwin. According to Darwin, worry about appearance causes us to focus on the part of the body that we are worried about, which alters the blood flow to that part of the body and causes blushing in that area. Through habit and association, blushing eventually becomes an innate expression of similar emotions, including concern of the case of others in the face of traits not necessarily related to appearance. This would have happened in the case of blushing due to moral issues, such as that which occur due to guilt for having broken some rule. What are the characteristic of features of this explanation that we can relate with the anti-slavery ideology? First of all, presuppose that the trait is homologous in all races. Yes, the rabbit is okay. But blushing is unique to human beings and is related to developed mental faculties. The mental states that cause it are shyness, shame, and modesty. What they all have in common is the concern about how others perceive us and what they think of us. Yes, it's not a second-hand thinking, but not attribute mental state, but mental state that are about my mental state. It's okay. Well, okay, not only mental state attribute to others, but mental state about our mental states. These developed mental capacities are found in all races and in the ancestor from which the trait originates. And that's the argument that Darwin not developed in this. Yes, the trait that implies the mental trait that implies that we all have the same mental capacities. Blushing not only show the common present descent of all humans, but also show that all humans have high mental capacities. Darwin said, of all expression, blushing seems to be the most strictly human, yet it is common to all or nearly all races of men, whether or not any change of color is visible in their skin. It can hardly be doubted that animals are capable of appreciating beautiful colors and even form, as is shown by the pain which the individual of one sex take in displaying their beauty before those of opposite sex. But it does not seem possible that any animal, until its mental power has been developed to an equal or nearly equal degree with those of men, will have closely considered and been sensitive about its own personal appearance. I would say. So, second, the explanation, as the one about the difference in, between races, implies contingent evolution. Implies an extraordinary and complex chain of facts, I would like to say, which make it possible to stress the point of the improbability of the convergence in the expressions, and consequently support the idea that man derived from some form of lower animal, and supports the belief in the specific or subspecific unity of the various races. It's true that Darwin see in the blushing a defense of monogenism, but above all, it reinforced the idea of contingent evolution, which led to the dissolution of the worldview that implied absolute standards of perfection and beauty, on which slavery was sometimes based. See the chain of being with the perfection and the beauty as a goal. The idea of contingency is explicit in Darwin text. For example, in two quotes, the word it has often been remarked appear as if it had long been preparing for the advent of the man. And this, in one sense, is strictly true, for he owes his birth to a long line of progenitors. If any single link in this chain had never existed, man would not have been exactly what he now is. Some as the contingency, as Stephen Shaibu, wonderful guy, speak about contingency. If or in this other quote that in the second edition of this well, after in other editions, Darwin removed this quote. It will be appeared that mere novelty or change of, for the sake of change has sometimes acted like charm on females' beards, in the same manner as change of fashion with us. The Duke of Argyll says, I am more and more convinced that variety, mere variety, must be admired to be an object and in nature, I wish the view can explain what he here means by nature. Is it mean that the creator of the universe ordained and diversity results for his own satisfaction, or that of man? The former notion seems to me as much wanting in due reverence as the later improbability. Capriciousness of taste in the birds themselves appear a more fitting explanation. Sorry. For the way that I heard the quote. And also the idea that there are no standard perfection of beauty is also explicit in Darwin. The problem whether organization and the world has advanced is in many ways excessively integrated to attempt to compare members of distinct types in the scale of highness seems hopeless. Who will decide whether a cute fish be higher than a bee? That insect with the great bonfire believed to be in fact more highly organized than a fish or done upon another type. And he's even more specific in personal notebooks. It is absurd to talk of one animal being higher than another, right? He wrote, but who with the face of the earth covered with the most beautiful savannas and forests dare to say that intellectuality is the only aim in this world? Is explicitly is against the idea of chain of beings, but based in interpretation of Darwin's idea, quotations can be dangerous. These are revolutionary texts. This means that he used the language of previous approach to communicate and think new ideas. Incompatible with such approach, therefore, there are contradictory statements or at least tension in the text of Darwin that make interpretation difficult. What is important in the case is that evolutionary contingent is not based on isolated statement, but is constitutive part of Darwin explanation, both of the origin of right and difference and in the origin of expressions. Although the specific explanation that Darwin provides in many cases are not accepted today, definitely the explanation about the expression of emotion, we don't accept that now. The acceptance of his general framework, and as he predicted, this statement, which imply absolute comparison between races in terms of perfections, disappear from biology in an observed way. Darwin predicted. So, for example, this is the first one is from a book about expressions. Now, as it is in the order of nature that the most intelligent social being is also the most intelligible, so this faculty of blushing with distinguished men is a natural sign of his high perfection. And from this point of view, the white man seems to us to realize a greater beauty than the Negro, in whom the traits of intelligence and life are, if I may say, so vivid and obscure. Beautiful thing to say. Or the one that we saw before, in what other part of the globe shall we find blush that overspread the soft features of the beautiful woman in Europe, that emblem of modesty and delicate feelings and sense. This vanish from biology. In time. From biology. This is our president saying pre-Darwinian things. Well, conclusions. Although some may argue that emotion is not very Darwinian, the book about emotions is not very Darwinian because they do not appeal to natural selection, considering it in relation to this and help us to understand their specific main goals. The origin of blushing can be explained as the development of the argument mentioned but not developed by Darwin. In this sense, a stronger link can be drawn between both book expression and dissent and anti-slavery ideologies. The issue goes beyond the defense of monogenism. The explanation given in both books implies that evolution is contingent, meaning it has no predetermined direction and there are no objective standards of beauty or perfection, as opposite to the chain of being beauty. Additionally, both books emphasize that mental capacity of humans are similar and profound, and that racial differences are superficial. And that's all.